thank you so much for joining us for this lunchtime live stream. I think this is a really cool idea, and it also lets some of our international viewers join. We have a few international supporters who often have a hard time when we do it in the evening after regular work hours. So I hope you're joining us today. Thank you. If you're watching this live, it means you're a supporter of our team either on Patreon or Facebook. So thank you so much for that. You'll be able to ask us questions live, and I'll be replying during the live stream. So go ahead and use the chat feature. I see a lot of you already found it since we've been talking on there leading up to this. But go ahead and post your questions on there, and I'll go through and make sure to answer them all as long as we have time. I know these tend to run a little bit long. I'd also like to welcome our newest supporters. You can see the names on the screen there. They've joined since our last live stream. So thank you so much for joining. You're making possible all of our efforts outside of the BattleBox, such as educational content, behind the scenes content like this, which is really exciting for us. Free care packages for sick kiddos, which has been a really, really awesome initiative. Local events and tournaments that we run, and we show Witch Doctor and a lot more things like that. So thank you so much for making that all possible. If you're watching this live stream as a recording and you'd like to join us live next time and you're not a supporter yet, make sure to take a look at the description so you can see more details on how to join and the perks that you get in return, in addition to all the things that you help make happen. So speaking of perks, I'm going to announce this later this week on social media, but I wanted you guys to be the first to know since we're on a live stream today. I figured I'd take advantage and announce our next giveaway for our supporters. This is one that I'm really excited about. I know we had some cool ones in the past. We gave away Shaman's top plate, which has probably been my favorite one so far. A bunch of autographed pictures and books. We gave away our talking cards from Tale of the Tape. I kept one signed by the cast because that was a really, really fun project. And today's giveaway is going to be an actual used battle damage front tire from Witch Doctor. So I'm really, really excited about this one. I love when fans get to keep a part of Witch Doctor. I love knowing that Witch Doctor's living all over the world. So as a supporter, keep an eye out in the supporter groups. I'm going to post, actually officially announcing the giveaway, and all you have to do is comment on that post to be entered to win this. Now, if you are a supporter already, you should be seeing your name on the screen. So all of you will be eligible to enter for this. And since we do have supporters on both Patreon and Facebook, we are going to go ahead and give away 2 wheels. So this is a full set of front wheels on Witch Doctor. We're going to give away one to our Facebook supporters and one to our Patreon supporters. So we'll cover shipping. All you have to do is comment and enter, and you could take one of these home. So I'm really, really excited about that. If you're not a supporter yet and you want to enter it, you'll have to be a supporter by the end of the week when we post that. So hurry up and get a jump on it if you want to be part of it. All right, I see questions already coming in. But before I get to answering questions, I wanted to talk a little bit of background on this episode. This was the round of 32. From here on out, I'm going to be talking all sorts of spoilers, so make sure you watch the episode, and if you haven't, at least that you're okay with spoilers. Frankly, even if I know what happens, because I know what happens, obviously I was there and I got to see a lot of the matches. It's still so fun to see them on TV, and to even our own matches. Like I don't remember what happened, so it's really fun to watch them. So if you haven't watched the show, it doesn't mean you have to tune off the live stream, but just know that spoilers are coming your way. So I'll start by showing you a picture of Witch Doctor for this season. So this is the Witch Doctor that we've run, pretty much the same configuration every match. This is the Witch Doctor that everybody has seen on the show, actually at filming. So a lot of people thought that Glitch was a really hard draw for us because we don't have any ground game. Now, ground game has been the talk of the sport for at least the last year or two. We filmed Tale of the Tape where we talked to other teams. Our last episode, we had a lot of jokes about ground game. So as a team, we are very aware of ground game. I've been very vocal on the show and on social media that I don't like forks and I don't like the ground game. But we are going to do whatever it takes to be competitive. And we did make forks for this season. Now, we were planning on only using the forks in case of emergencies or in a match where we thought we absolutely had to use them. Of course, anytime you try something new in the BattleBox, like forks, they might get hung up on the floor. The saw slots might be an issue. They could get stuck on the wall. Who knows? So we always rather fight with our weapon than with forks, so we were trying not to run them. But in the case of Glitch, we thought it was a perfect opportunity to bring them out because Glitch is unique in that their ground game isn't just in the front of the robot. Their entire robot is really low. So while our usual strategy against forks is that Mike just has to drive around and get a hit somewhere else, which is a lot of pressure on him. For Glitch, that's not really an option because they are low all the way around. So we thought this was a perfect chance to debut our forks. We try to keep them under wraps as long as possible. I actually posted this photo cropped to show that we were running forks, but without showing that Mammoth was looking at the robot. So this photo was taken in between. We were outside actually watching Glitch testing in the test box. They were having issues getting their weapon up still. Our match was supposed to happen in the first session of the day. This picture was probably taken around 9:30. And we still had the forks on the robot because we were still expecting to fight Glitch, but production had come out and said, if Glitch can't get ready in the next 15 minutes, it's going to be Mammoth. So Mammoth was taking a look at our robot for the first time. We were chatting with them like this had never happened before. An opponent had never been switched out, so we were still doubting whether or not it would happen. I know Ricky came up and was like, we're exhausted, we're ready, but you know, do you think we're really going to get in the box? Because like it's been such an emotional roller coaster, and I had been watching Glitch all day. We had offered to help them. We had obviously been keeping tabs because we wanted to fight. And I told Ricky, you know, I know this has never happened before, but they're having issues getting their weapon spun up. That's not a matter of, I need to do this, this, and this, and this is going to get done. You know, you don't know what the problem is. So they ran back after they took a look at our robot, and we ran back to the pit to get switch our configuration in 15 minutes, which is crazy. So here you can see what our pre-fight planning consisted of, which was Mike and Cheery pretending to be Mammoth as best as they could to try to figure out how that big lifter snout would catch our robot. Usually our ribs are excellent protection from overhead weapons, but Mammoth is not really an overhead weapon. They try to lift you up. So we were trying to figure out where our catch points might be. And as you can see on the robot, the ribs overhang the front. So we have a really nice catch point right there, nice and high, right where Mammoth would want to grab it. And the ribs actually stick out of the sides a little bit too. So we were definitely concerned about that. Given more time, our normal, planning time for this, I think we would have taken our ribs off and cut them so that it didn't extend past the mid-rail, and we would have cut all those catch points off. Since we didn't have time to do that, we actually talked about taking the ribs off altogether since we didn't really need the top armor. But then we would be competing severely underweight against the lifter, which sounds like a bad idea. But more importantly, I think Mike was actually the first one to point out that our self-righting ribs actually rest on the ribs. So it might compromise the functionality of our self-righter if we didn't have the ribs. And obviously that's super important against a robot that's trying to flip you over. So ultimately, we decided to put all the pressure on Mike and just try to outdrive Mammoth, which is a huge task because they are so big that to be able to get around them, you have to actually drive, most of the arena. So that's our big secret. We did have forks. We did take them off for Mammoth because we decided if we're going to run the ribs, then let's make sure the ribs don't get damaged if they manage to grab one and throw us by it. So we took our forks off and switched to our ribs. In our regular configuration, our robot weighs exactly 250 pounds. So if we run the forks, we have to run lighter ribs. So we had the lighter ribs on for for Glitch, and then we switched it back to our main configuration, which looks like this for Mammoth. All right, so there is a lot more to get to, but let's start addressing some questions. So Jonathan says, if I end up winning, one of the wheels, I can add it to my internal bulkhead piece. Yeah, that's right. You do have a piece of Witch Doctor already. It would be fun to piece together a whole Witch Doctor from parts from auctions and giveaways. I know some fans have really started collecting parts and they can build, like a Hypershock tire and a Witch Doctor wheel and a weapon from another robot. So I think that's really, really fun. Robotic Pixels asks, so what do you see as the eventual remedy for defeating the fork game? we have been resisting the fork game. Like I said, we're only using forks in situations where they're absolutely necessary. We didn't use them against endgame. We didn't use them against Duck, which Duck is a lifter, which, you know, ground game is important. We didn't use it against Rusty when he had a big lifting plow. So far we're doing okay without forks. I don't know that there's a solution other than a return to horizontal spinners, because you can't run forks against horizontal spinners. I mean, you can, but it's probably not a great idea. I think that's a big part of the idea behind Fusion, because you can't just put your horizontal configuration on, because then you're going to get destroyed by the vertical spinner. So I think for a while we're going to see forks continue to arrive unless they change the terrain of the arena. But yeah, I don't know where it eventually ends up. There's a physical limit to how long you want to make the forks, and I think we're getting there. I think Endgame has kind of reached that. So I don't think we're going to see forks getting longer, but I think we're going to see every single robot have some sort of ground game. And he also asked, since the fight in a different scenario where you were actually scheduled to fight Mammoth, is there anything specifically you would do to the configuration? Yeah, like I said, we would have definitely cut those ribs back. That was a huge risk that we took in leaving those that way. But we just didn't have the time to do it for this one. And I've heard a lot of people on social media, we've been attacked a lot on social media after this match, saying that Mammoth was a cupcake fight and that they were a lot easier fight for us than Glitch. And what was production thinking? Mammoth was established to be essentially the 35th seed before we even went into the tournament. So they were on standby to replace anybody that couldn't make it to a fight. So I know they were on standby for at least one other match before us. So it would always be Mammoth. It wasn't dependent on whether it was us or somebody else that needed to swap in. It would have been Mammoth regardless. But honestly, the reason that you see Mike come out like in full force at the beginning of that match, and that's because we were nervous. If you see Mike's driving at the beginning of the Rusty fight, which obviously we had an advantage on that fight, even though you can lose to anybody in this game, and Rusty has surprised everybody and won some pretty tough fights. He went 3 minutes with Sawblaze, where in the same season where we didn't, and he beat Kraken. So we were not taking Rusty lightly, but you could see Mike at the beginning of the fight comes out and kind of circles the arena and feels it out. He drives very differently in the match with Mammoth. He comes out looking for blood. He's very aggressive. He's going after those tires. And that when we drive like that against an opponent, it tells you that we are taking that opponent very seriously and that we feel that we need a knockout as soon as possible, because the longer the match goes on, the more risk to our robot. So I think it's easy after the fact, because we did defeat Mammoth very quickly, to say that Mammoth was a very easy fight, but that's not the case at all. Mammoth defeated Copperhead, who was a number 3 seed the previous season, and Copperhead is a vertical spinner just like us. So that was the last kind of impression that we had going into this fight. So we were not overconfident at all. We felt a little off our games just because we didn't have time to prepare like we normally prepare. We normally watch every single fight that a robot's ever fought. We watch any build videos, any social media pictures. We really do our research, and we did none of that with Mammoth. So I give a lot of credit to Mammoth for building such a unique robot. They really have nothing to base their design on. They're trying everything for the first time, and the robot has been really effective. And it's a curveball. We have a Tombstone configuration. We don't have a Mammoth configuration. So I don't know that we would have built a specific configuration for them, other than we would have definitely trimmed our ribs back to avoid that. Jonathan asks, what scope could there be to a robot that uses an opponent's ground game to its advantage, so intentionally ending up on top of the robot? Yeah, that's really interesting. We did this to a certain extent when we fought Scorpios last season. They have that big, they call it the victory wedge. It's V wedge, which the front of the V goes right under our weapon. So we have absolutely no ground game there. They can get right in there really deep and make our weapon totally ineffective. So our strategy for that match was actually to monster truck on top of that and try to hit their arm before they try to swing their arm down. So if you watch that match again, knowing that, you'll see that Mike actually drives full speed up onto their robot on purpose to hit their arm. And it did work because we were able to disable their arm. But I think if we had driven that match differently, Scorpios definitely had the upper hand because of that. So we were definitely trying to get up on top to be able to hit something other than their wedge. Matt says, listening to some other podcasts and YouTube channels, it sure seems like the show could benefit from explaining things better to viewers to avoid controversy. Yeah, there's been a lot of controversy this year. We've been on the receiving end of a lot of controversy this year. I didn't really consider our matches that controversial when we were at the event. But obviously you stand, the fans are sitting back and seeing it from a different perspective. More transparency from BattleBox would definitely be better for the builders and for the fans and for the treating this as a sport as a whole. I think we really need a seeding of all of the robots before the start of the match. Most of the robots have historical data that they could draw from, and they could seed everybody so they could explain the matchups a lot better. People don't understand why we got handed Rusty. Normally, how they explain it is you get a match more or less at your level, a challenge match, which is a match above your level, and then an easier fight, which would be a match below your level. And obviously, it doesn't mean that you're going to win the matches you're supposed to win. There's upsets all the time, but I would consider that Duck was our kind of even fight. It was really a challenge for us. Duck has not fared that well this season, but we were their very first match. So at the time that the selection committee picked Duck for us, we were thinking Duck from years past, who just did not die. And we have traditionally had issues with the reliability, especially our first match of the season. So drawing Duck, our very first match, was definitely not a gimme fight by any means. And obviously they're a veteran. Hell has been in the sport longer than we have. And then we drew Endgame, the champ from last year. So I don't think I need to say much about that. I think we held our own for a while, but ultimately we did take a lot of damage and we had to move to an entirely new frame in the fight card. So a robot only survived 2 matches and we were already down a whole frame before we got into the tournament. So after our third fight was our easier fight, which was Rusty. I could think of a handful of robots that would have been easier for us than Rusty. Rusty is not by any means a robot that just stops working by itself, or, you really have to beat Rusty. It does not beat itself. So I didn't see any issue with their fight card fights. I thought it was their typical spread of opponents. But I agree with you, Matt. The controversy, I think a lot of it is fed just by the fact that there's no transparency into how they pick the matchups and their kind of line of thinking for that. So it kind of leads into people thinking that they're favoring one team or the other. If you look at the rest of our bracket, I mean, we're going to fight some of the top spinners in the sport. Our quarter of the bracket, I think, is the most brutal quarter of the bracket. So, no spoilers there, but our path to the nut is not an easy one. So I think if we do end up getting to the finals or winning the nut, it will be hard to debate whether we deserved it or not based on the robots that we have to fight to get there. And I think that's true for the whole bracket. I don't think anybody has an easy path to the bracket. It might be that you're in a quadrant with more horizontal spinners, and if you happen to like fighting horizontal spinners as we do, that would have been easier for us. It's a game of rock, paper, scissors. Some types of robots are just better against other types of robots, so there's a little luck in how you get paired up like that, but there's no easy fights, especially now in the top 16s. There are no easy fights. Every single fight could be a finals worthy caliber of fight. Adam asks, were there any matches in the round of 32 that you were looking forward to seeing, aside from your own, of course? Good question, Adam. So part of our day was crazy and we were waiting all day, about to fight. Our match got pushed back like an hour at a time, 2 hours at a time. We were constantly on standby to go up at any minute. I remember not knowing whether or not I should have lunch. I don't like to have lunch, Mike, either right before we fight. Obviously, we're nervous and we're excited and, don't want to get an upset stomach and not really hungry before a fight. So since we were supposed to fight in the first session, we were planning not to eat until after we fought. And then the match kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And we were hungry and we do we eat and risk that we're going to fight right after? We have to like scarf down our lunch because they tell us we're up right as we're eating. So we gave in and we ate an awkwardly late lunch, which was good because we didn't end up fighting until 10 o'clock on the dot. So it was just a difficult day. But the point of me telling you all of that is that means that we didn't really get to see any of the fights that day. When you're fighting, you're focused on that. You're not really watching the pit TV because we have a TV where you can see all the fights. So we didn't really see a lot of the round of 32. I'm really excited to see Hydra in the round of 32. I'll have to watch it on TV because I haven't seen it yet. But they haven't really been performing up to the level that we know we have experienced personally last season that Hydra's capable of. So I want to see them get it fixed up, hopefully in the tournament. So that'll be really exciting. And we have some newcomers. You know, obviously I was looking forward to seeing Glitch perform in the tournament when things really start getting serious and it's really tight. Obviously they were unable to make it to our fight. Blip is in the bracket, which is a robot that I don't think a lot of people are paying a lot of attention to, but it's really, really cool. There's just definitely some awesome matchups. Okay, so Lisa wants to know, what musicals are you listening to? For those that don't know, I am a huge musical theater fan, I guess. I don't perform at all. It's just like going to the theater. I actually went to a show last night. I went to see Anastasia on tour. And this is the time of year, March, April, where the Broadway season's at its highest. So I actually have 4 shows, tickets to 4 shows in the next 2 weeks. So I'm going to be seeing Something Rotten, which is a show I really, really like. I'm going to be watching Matilda this weekend and Sondheim on Sondheim. I'm a really big Sondheim fan. So those are some of the shows that I'm listening to, I guess. I love the soundtrack of Something Rotten. So knowing that I'm going to go see Something Rotten, that's kind of been on loop for the last little bit. So it's always funny how those two, that was kind of like my fandom. Even before I ever built robots, I've been into musical theater for a long time. And it's funny anytime it comes up, because I know I have some signed posters and stuff in the back, to see how much of an overlap there is. Even among our supporters, there's quite a few people that know a lot about musical theater. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so I think I'm caught up with the questions for now. So let's see some pictures from that last fight. So this, I believe this picture was our very first actual contact with Mammoth. Where obviously our plan was to drive around to the side to hit the wheels as much as we could, but Mammoth is a really, really good driver. It's, you know, I know Huge gets compared to Mammoth a lot, and they have, you know, they're not quite as maneuverable, but Mammoth is really good at putting Mammoth exactly where they want to. And Mike, you know, decided that if he had to take a shot at their lifter, it was best to do it at an angle, because then our weapon is sticking out the furthest. So they would be hitting our weapon instead of grabbing our ribs. So you could see that really, really nicely coming to effect here. And their lifter arm is actually pretty flexible, which you can see too. So it actually does a really good job of absorbing some of the shock. But I think this is a really, really cool picture. There's not a lot really to hit on Mammoth. I mean, you can aim for the tires or take a risk in hitting the lifter as it comes around, but there's a lot of air to hit. We were surprised at how high Mammoth actually flew when we did get a good hit on them. There's a beautiful moment where Mike actually hits one wheel, and as Mammoth comes around, he's able to hit the other wheel, and I think that's what we're seeing in this picture here. You can see the top wheel's already damaged, and he's getting a hit on the wheel that's on the bottom now. So, I mean, seeing a robot, I know that Mammoth weighs the same weight as us. They're 250 pounds, but just seeing something that big flying through the air is always really, really cool. So you can see the clock in the back there, 2:49. So it's just past, it's 11 seconds into the match. So you can see that Mike came out guns blazing and really try to get some hits really quick. Because the shorter we can make this match, the better chance we had of coming out with the win. Then this picture you can see on the clock, 2:25. This, I believe, is already during the count out. And I think the most impressive thing was that there's part of the frame in the back right behind their wheel that's missing there that's actually broken off. And I don't have the part with me, unfortunately. I'll try to post a picture of it later. But Mammoth did actually give us that part of the robot that signed it, and they gave it to us. So that's a really, really cool part for our collection. So thank you, Mammoth. I'm super excited to have that part. It's really an honor to fight a robot like this. So here's a closer up photo of that damage there. And then this is the wheel. And I've heard a lot of questions as to why their wheel was yellow when it started off black. So a lot of robots that use pneumatic tires, or tires that are filled with air, they actually have to fill the inside of them with foam. So we share a shop with Hypershock. Geez, that's difficult to say. And they do this, so we got to see them do it. They have like go-kart tires, and they have a whole process that they use to fill them with foam, so that you can't just puncture a tire and get a flat tire essentially on the robot. So that's exactly what we saw happen with Mammoth. When we hit them, we actually ripped off the rubber from the foam, so you saw the inside of the tire kind of fall out, it was pretty cool. I thought that was a cool moment, and obviously we took a picture of it. So it's just kind of unpredictable things that happen when you fight a robot like Mammoth. And then we did talk to them after the match, and we got a closer up look at the damage. They were great sports about it. They were part of what I loved about this match when I saw it on TV was seeing how excited Ricky was to be in the tournament. He was on cloud 9, you know, and for what a difficult day we had to see Mammoth get their shot and be that excited about it. It was just super, super, super cool. So they were super nice after the fight. We got to take a close-up look at the robot. You could see where our weapon hit their weapon on the side there, kind of in between where the chains are now. The chain wasn't wrapped around like that. They must have just put that on after, since it was dragging on the floor or something. And then they have their tire on top. So really, really cool design on Mammoth for sure. Okay, so it looks like I missed Jazzy's question. Let me go back up and see. Okay, here I see. Glitter Bomb asks, what is your favorite thing about the current Witch Doctor robot? Ooh, that is a difficult question. Let's see. Okay, so I'll give you two answers, because the first thing that comes to mind kind of feels like an out, and I'm not trying to avoid the question, and it sounds cheesy. I know it sounds cheesy, but my favorite thing about Witch Doctor this year is actually our team, because it takes, as we saw with Glitch, because I think a lot of the times the teams are so prepared and so on it that viewers kind of take for granted how difficult it is to actually make it into each of these fights and do repairs. We filmed 2.5 episodes a day, so you might see that we didn't compete for 4 episodes, but that just means that we skipped a day, you know, so it's really, really hard to make these repairs. This season is the best field we've ever seen, and it's all won or lost in the pits. I know I say that all the time and it sounds cheesy, but I really don't think we would have been anywhere this season without the team. You know, we lost the endgame and had to switch to a completely different robot already in the fight card, so that gives you an idea. So my first answer is definitely our team. My second answer would be that we made Witch Doctor about 3 inches longer this year. I don't know if you can tell without seeing the picture side by side, but if you see on the side there, our chain guards are actually longer than they've ever been. And the reason we did this was to try to keep the robot more stable and drive better. So a lot of people say that we have the best self-rider in the sport, and our self-rider does work well, but I think people think it's really good because we use it a lot. We use it a lot more than other teams. It seems like we're always self-riding. So we made the robot longer in order to improve our center of mass. Obviously, the weapon is the heaviest part of the robot, so the weight's all kind of biased towards the front. So by making the robot longer, we push some of that weight backwards. It's just the fact that the robot's longer makes it harder to flip over. So I think the robot is driving a lot better. Obviously, Mike is a great driver. I get asked a lot why I don't drive the robot since I'm the captain of the team, but I think that speaks to itself. Mike is an incredible driver. I'm not as good as him. I used to drive our robot in high school when I started at the University of Miami on the team with Mike. I used to drive that robot. Even though Mike was on the team, it was a full body spinner. But Mike is just incredible at driving Witch Doctor, so I would never pretend that I could do that better than him. Okay. Robotic Pixels ask, dream match with the current field of bots. That's hard. Because, you know, there's kind of different categories of fights you would want. There's fights that you would want because they'd be really fun. There's fights you would want because they'd be a really big challenge. I'd love to fight Hydra. When we fought Hydra at the beginning of last season, we were having issues with our weapon disc breaking, and we still were able to take it to the judges. So I'd love a rematch where we could have both robots at 100%. I think that'd be really, really fun. Nobody sends you flying like Hydra does. So that's why I kind of gave the caveat, like, I'm not asking for that matchup like round of 32. That would be a really, really difficult matchup, but I think it would definitely be a fun fight to have. We've never fought Huge. We don't really have a Huge specific strategy. We have an idea of what we would do, which I won't share here yet in case we do end up fighting Huge. You fight enough seasons with the same, you know, similar fields of robots, and you're going to end up fighting everybody eventually. So I think Huge would be really fun. Yeah, I was going to say Blip, but I already picked Hydra as a flipper. So I'm going to say Hydra or Huge. If you ask me again tomorrow, I'll probably give you a different answer because there's so many robots. And when you start really, like before each season, we actually print out a list with pictures of all the robots, and we kind of go through and think about how we would fight each robot, because the more you think of it, the more nuances you see, and you're like, okay, well, yes, Huge hits from overhead, but also we have to be able to, you know, take a hit in the center of our weapon. You may be having the belt in the middle is a really, really bad idea. Maybe it'd be better if we had a single disc configuration for a robot like Huge. So if we go down the middle, we go weapon to weapon instead of that really exposed aluminum. You know, there's a lot of different ways to fight a robot like Huge, and that's true for most of the field. So we go through each robot and kind of have like an in-depth discussion of what we would do in the design stage. So that helps us like shape our configurations and kind of be ready for everybody. We lost against Sawblaze last year, even though we had beat them the year before, because everybody keeps improving. That's why you don't get the same outcome over and over. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how would we beat Sawblaze. And we do have a configuration specific for Sawblaze. We probably wouldn't use it for anybody else. So you'll have to wait and see if we get a chance to fight Sawblaze. But that's the risk. You end up putting all this time and effort and money into these configurations that you may or may not use. So if we had designed the configuration for Huge, because eventually we're going to have to fight them, you know, so far we wouldn't have been able to use it. So it's pretty tricky. Jason, hi Jason. He says he agrees Blip would be a fun fight. I think Blip could make anybody a fun fight because they're new, so you still don't know what to expect from them. So as a new team, you expect them to not be that great, but they're from the makers of Tantrum and Aaron. So obviously it's not really a new robot. You know, it's not a new team, but it's an entirely new concept to the BattleBots world. It's never been done before. So it's really exciting to see it work well. And maybe we'll get a chance to fight Blip. That'd be really fun. All right, let me check really quick if we have any questions over on this other page. Nope, okay. So we're at about 35 minutes. If you guys don't have any other questions, I think we could start wrapping it up. I think this has been an awesome live stream. Some really, really good questions. One thing we haven't talked about is that at this point, we actually know who we're fighting next, which is not something in all our other live streams we have to pretend like we don't know who we're fighting next. But in this case, it's going to be Copperhead. So this is our first real big spinner of the season. Copperhead is a deadly, deadly robot. They do have ground game. We kind of go back and forth on whether we should use the forks or not use the forks because they have like those arms that stick out in front. So it could be useful or they could get in the way. Ultimately, we decided not to use our forks. We like I said before, we're really trying to use our forks only if we absolutely need to. And we thought in this fight, Copperhead is really small, so we'll leave it up to a driving battle between Robert and Mike to try to determine the winner. When you have two robots like this, kind of similar in design, it really comes down to driving. So this is a really heavy-hitting match. We're really looking forward to it. Things are getting really serious. I mean, like I said, from the top 16s all the way to the end, our whole path is just finals-worthy matches the whole way. So we are happy to go one by one because every match definitely could be our last. The field is just crazy this year. Jonathan asked, do you like configurations that drastically change how a robot functions? Hide your frame being an obvious example. I mean, you always have to plan for surprises, as we learned many times this season. I mean, we've even talked about having kind of a different format on BattleBots where you don't know who you're fighting until you're in the arena. Like, it's a random matchup and you can't prepare for a specific opponent. Your robot just has to be ready to fight anybody. The hardest thing about configurations, like you say, Jonathan, that change how a robot functions is that your opponent's not prepared for it. So the surprise element works really well once. That's part of it. Robots like Ribot that are configuration based, you know, they wait till the last possible minute to pick their configuration because it does affect it a lot. I like to see teams come up with new ways to fight other robots, like Ghost Raptor did with the de-icer. I think that was season 2 or 3. It was specifically designed for Ice Wave, but it's a huge risk to Ghost Raptor because it might not work. When Hypershock put those big rakes on to fight Huge, they took a risk and it didn't really work. One of them got stuck inside their weapon. So it definitely makes the show exciting to see people try weapons or configurations specifically for an opponent, but don't forget that it's a huge risk for the team as well. We try not to come up with something too crazy at the event unless it's absolutely necessary, because there's a lot on the line. Lisa and Jude say they would like to see us fight Hypershock. Yeah, definitely. I don't know how we haven't fought Hypershock because, you know, our whole history together, we've been in it since season 1. So you think by now we would have gotten matched up, but we, like I said before, we share a shop with them. We built our robots together. We share a lot of just kind of strategy discussion. So we know everything about each other's robots. So it'd be really interesting to fight. And obviously Will's an incredible driver. Hypershock is super fast. So that would be a really fun matchup for sure. Carl asked, what opponent from the past, not in current season, would you most like to make a return next season? So two come to mind right away. Chomp. I love Chomp. Chomp is awesome. I think it just takes a couple of seasons to dial something like Chomp in. I mean, you see us having teething issues at the beginning of a season. Imagine a robot like Chomp. There's so much going on there. So I would really like them to have the time to dial it in and come back. And then the other robot that I would love to see a return is a new and improved Bronco. Bronco has been my favorite robot forever. They were our very first match ever on BattleBots, and they flipped us out of the arena like it was nothing within the first minute of the fight. So it was a really big, like, welcome to the big leagues, kid. This is not what you're used to. So I've always had a lot of respect for Bronco. It was the flipper for a decade, more than a decade. So I'd really like to see what they come up with next. All right, and I have one last question from Sean Eaton, who wasn't able to join us today. He asked, do you want to fight Glitch during the Fight Night fight next season? Yeah, absolutely. Glitch is a really unique design. They are a new team, and they've gone undefeated in the fight card, which we didn't do, so I give them a lot of credit for that. Really hard, and they fought hard opponents. It's not like they had fights handed to them by any means. So yeah, I'd love to fight Glitch. I've heard a lot of criticism come our way that we got spared by not having to fight Glitch. We were ready to fight Glitch. We thought it was actually not a terrible draw for us. They had kind of some mobility issues early on, and our robot is more maneuverable than ever, so we thought we were going to be able to get the edge on them on driving. Obviously, their weapon is crazy destructive, so I'd love to have a chance to fight him and finally try out our forks and see how that works. So hopefully that does happen in the future. All right, so a couple of things before we go. If you haven't seen the last YouTube video we posted, it's kind of a different pace than our videos that we've done in the past. So we made it to the finals in 2019, like most of you know. So I went through and kind of explained everything we're thinking and feeling between the moment we walk through the tunnel to the moment where the match starts. So it's kind of a piece of the experience that doesn't really get shown on BattleBox a lot. So I hope you enjoy it. It's a more personal video, so it's a change of pace, but I hope you get a chance to check it out. Don't forget to look on social media for our giveaway. If you're not a supporter yet, check out the description to see how you can join and own a part of Witch Doctor. If you don't win that giveaway, or if you're looking for a different part of Witch Doctor, we will be posting more parts on eBay for auction after our season is over. And we always have some parts on our website that are more inexpensive to make sure that, you know, there's a wide range of pricing on parts. And finally, we are going to be going up to Orlando for a viewing party hosted by Robot Ruckus. And all the Florida teams are going to be there except for Rotator, because he couldn't get the time off of work. So you can give him a hard time if you want to see him there. But everybody's going to be there, even Nightmare, Kraken, Hypershock, Captain Shredderator, Extinguisher. I know I'm missing more, but there's a lot of Florida teams that we're all going to be there. We actually, Robot Ruckus actually rented a movie theater, so you're going to be able to go to the concessions and buy popcorn and soda and watch it on the big screen. So I'm really, really excited for that. It's our first viewing party since the pandemic, so I can't wait. And I hope to see some of you there. I know some of you have already gotten tickets, but we're almost sold out. We're down to the last few. So if you haven't gotten a ticket, hurry up and do that. Okay, I see one more question from Turnabout, so I'll answer that one and then we'll sign off. Do you think it's ever worth not having a Strymech, a self-righting mechanism? I feel like this question is kind of directed at Hypershock because they have been getting a lot of grief for taking off their self-righting mechanism because it kind of appeared like it would have made a difference in their fight against P1. Our first two seasons, we didn't have, our second season we did. Our first season, we didn't have a self-righting mechanism. It cost us a match against Tombstone that I think we would have won otherwise. And we, like I said before, we use it a lot. So I can't imagine Witch Doctor without a self-righting mechanism. But I totally understand why Hypershock doesn't have one. Their robot is bouncy. They can gyro back over. The issue they had against P1 was that the kind of bunny ears that they have, I think they call them horns, got bent out. So their weapon was hitting the floor. Because normally those horns kind of keep the weapon off the floor. So the gyro force from that helps them come back over. So really the root cause of their issue was that those horns bent, not that they didn't have a self-righting mechanism. But Byforce doesn't have a self-righting mechanism and they're doing just fine. So I think it's very dependent on driving style and on the design of your robot. So it's a very team-to-team decision, and I can't imagine running Witch Doctor without it. When is the viewing party? It is April 7th. That is the day of the finale of BattleBots. So that day will air, I think, the top 8. So the top 8, the top 4, and obviously the finals fight. So that's going to be in a movie theater. Check it out on our Facebook page. You see all the details, or message us if you can't find it. Tickets are going to be on sale for a little bit longer. All right, Jonathan, I'm glad you were able to join. I know you're international, so it was awesome having you this time. Thank you everybody for joining. I hope you can join for the next one. We're going to do one after Copperhead. So I hope you've enjoyed this live stream. Thank you so much for joining us. I think this was the most people we've ever had live. So again, if you're watching this as a recording and you want to chat with us so I can reply in real time, take a look at the description for information on how to become a supporter and all the perks that come with it. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope you enjoy our top 16 round fight against Copperhead. Bye.